Hello สวัสดีค่ะ
สวัสดีค่ะ
Hello.
Sawadika. Okay, just waiting for everyone to get on.
We can start.
Okay.
I think so.
All right. Welcome to the 31st Ask the Chief Forum. And we're just going to start out like we usually do, doing exercises. Okay. This exercise, we're going to do, I say, 3 of these. Beginning now. 1. And you should feel that energy start to move around in your body. And up. Feel a little bit in your hands. 2. And 3. All right. So next hands approximately 12 inches apart. Start to feel that vibration between your hands, and when not feeling it, let me know. Okay, very good. We're going to increase that. If it's stronger or a lot stronger. And when not feeling that increase, we know. Okay. So with that, we're going to contain ourselves. And to contain the forum. And we're going to contain our space. And we're going to push those perimeters outward. 1, 2, any order you want to. 3, and 4. So today we're going to, I will be expanding on a number of the true logics that have been posted over the, over the last year. And Ms. A will read those, the submitted true logics. And thanks for everyone for participating and sending in your choices. Okay.
So start out. Do the best with what you have, but you can always strive for more without taking from others. Only the weak of mind denigrate others to feel good about themselves. The weaker the mind, the harder they persist. There's a million things to worry about, but there's nothing really to worry about because worry won't help you resolve the situation. Stop waiting for others to solve your problems. You have a mind of your own, so exercise that bitch. Do you really care, or is it just about control? The image someone has of themselves based on lies cannot sustain itself. In the eyes of the system, the whole world is collateral damage. Don't come to the table with no marbles and a pocket full of compliments. Every cog has its purpose. The universe does not need duplicates. The system/density is only as strong as your fear. The most effective way to heal is to become stronger than the affliction, and the system gets the mind to destroy itself by getting it to believe in the ideas that will kill it.
Okay. I think maybe I will start out with in the eyes of the system,
The whole world is collateral.
the whole world is collateral damage. I think, do you want to do hashtags or just
Sure,
go
we
ahead?
can do that, or if you want to go ahead, I'll jump in.
Okay, jump in with the hashtag.
Yes.
So, this literally means that, again, we're in the matrix within the dense grid, and everything in the matrix, the dense grid, is designed to support the grid. So the ruse is that they concept that everyone is special and so on and so forth. That life is precious. You might have heard those types of sayings. When in reality, they don't believe any of that stuff. They don't believe that life is precious. They just they will put that out there primarily to, I should say, well, it's like sending you off on some kind of fantasy that that somehow the world cares about you, or when I say the world, i.e. the system, because you are in the matrix hologram that we call it, and that if you pay attention to how things function here, things you may read, if you keep track of just what, let's say, governments do to those who are within those governments, they show very clearly that they really don't care about the population on the planet. So they'll talk about, we're going to keep you safe, but inevitably they will do things that will do that are totally the opposite. So for starters, we can talk about wars that people are put through, and as far as like, also, I guess with the religious thing, this is talks about, I guess, the sanctity of life or something of that sort. But again, everyone is I guess, your brother or your sister, and so on and so forth. But there are always an exception. Thou shalt not kill, unless you change your mind and decide that you should kill this person or these people, and so on and so forth. So it just really has to do with the lies, the critical lies that you're basically exposed to every day. And if you pay attention again to just all these certain changes, one of my favorites for a while was, the Corona bit, which they're still pushing that, in certain cases very much big time. The way that I see it done is literally when it comes to just travel, or at first it was about not even being able to go out to the theater or go shopping and all this stuff and so on and so forth. But bear with me here today. But okay, well, that's to say that again. Then they start to roll back, because I've been saying that it's not real. And if it actually was real, then they would still be having everyone shut down. But again, not the whole population is believing what they're being told. And this has been going on for several decades. So I thought it was really interesting that people fell into it the way they fell into it. And maybe it's a lot more younger people who've fallen into it. A lot of older folks who've been through a lot of these different types of ruses having to do with flu vaccinations and so on and so forth. Some of them in 2020 just thought, okay, this is going to blow over, like all the fake flu threats and so on. And this one, for whatever reason, they got more serious about it, and it went on for 2 years, but still going on in certain ways. Certain countries rolled back on it, but it seems as though there's isolating people in their countries by making it very difficult for them to travel without getting this injection of who knows what, literally. So as far as caring about humanity, if you really again pay attention to what has been going on for the last 2 years, their test vaccines, and the fact that so many people have actually died from it, permanent nerve damage, and so on and so forth, which means that they really look at the population on the planet as experimental test subjects. So
when I was in school, how like they have the amendments, right to their arms, the right to religion, all those things as rights. And then whenever we looked into law, there's all these loopholes to where people have no rights, really. If law in the way that they amend it, you can just take away all these so-called rights. And like you said, did I hear that right in school? That they have laws that can just nullify all the rights they say they give people.
Yeah, I get it.
Okay, so it's like bullshit. And you know, the government says phrases like "by the people, for the people." Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah, well, even if you think in terms of the United States and other colonized, countries, talk about freedom and all this other stuff, and for the people, by the people, land of the free, but not acknowledging that that land of the free was taken from others, and the individual is still suffering from that. So, is it again? Are these people really considered people? Or again, it's, when I hear this, keep you safe stuff and all of that governments will spout, it's just, if you pay attention to anything that's going on, and not just, school history, which is, I think it's a Bob Marley song about his story. Maybe it might have been Ziggy Marley, I forget exactly. In other words, it's like this particular group's concept, or not concept, but version of history. What happens, they usually leave out a whole lot of stuff because they don't want to make themselves look bad. So, all over the planet, this is what goes on in governments and so on. So that's basically what what I was approaching or referring to with that particular true logic. And I guess Ms. A has you found the hashtags, and that should clarify. I might even expound on some of the hashtags.
So. What do you think about? We did a post that has to do with crowd surge or sacrifice, and in that it just shows the huge amount of deaths that they have done, especially in war. And you're saying that war is all over the planet, and how like they try to say, oh, this is a tragedy. This is a tragedy, but then the numbers are far less than them throwing other people into a park.
Oh yeah, the crowd surge numbers are far less. And again, there's this look here, then look here, don't look over there anymore. Again, they want this, everyone to have tunnel vision or just linear, sense of things, and again, one sensational thing after the next. And what I find is that once you start to catch them in a lie, or more people start to catch them in a lie, because there are people who try to pay attention and say, whatever these guys are saying doesn't make any sense. What do they do next? Okay, we got monkeypox. I said, okay, they just took, covered one lie with another lie. And this is the way, and also dense people are like that. They follow, literally, they're programmed and influenced by the system. So many people are influenced by the system, and they feel that they're doing good, with the system if they just basically follow the directives of the system. So we have one lie, and then they cover it with another lie when it seems like, the cat's out of the bag here, let's distract them with another lie. And then, they start to take their attention because most people are very linear, very tunnel vision, and then start to focus on the new lie. Then when they start to see that the new lie is falling apart, what do? They present another lie.
The crowd surges, for example, they always talk about, schools being shut up or whatever, middle schools and then, but they don't even take into consideration the number of kids that are killed, in wars all over the world. But not just that, you said crowd surges are a lot higher numbers than, massacres at schools even. Or you said that death by medical malpractice, death by tobacco usage, death by alcohol usage, death by genocide, then traffic crash deaths. Those numbers are far, exceeding, and people think, oh yeah, my government cares about me, but look at all these numbers.
Yeah, inevitably you end up being a lab, to them, a lab rat. It's just a test subject, not unlike, a cow waiting to be slaughtered. They take every part of that cow and they use it for something, or they experiment. They're literally just experimenting on animals. But there's a so many experiments that are done on people as well. Some they will have people, they pay people to let them experiment on them, but then there are experiments that people don't even know that are being perpetrated on them as well. So a lot of it has to do with fear. This, they scare you with, if you don't get this injection, you're going to die. And I'm like, here's the insanity of this world. The way things are set up, your avatar will transition out at some point. And it's not like everyone has a number, because I remember it's the average day, lifespan of the human being, and the human male, I think, was 75 years or something like that when I was a kid. And the lifespan of a woman was a bit longer than that. But there are individuals who end up going out at very young ages, all through, those numbers. So again, there's this craziness having to do with just fixed numbers for things and so on and so forth. And being out in the world and having to deal with people in business and so on and so forth, I would see the brainwash constantly, and see how people keep themselves tuned up by basically voicing this rhetoric or voicing what they learned, in school, and see how smart I am. I'm still able to regurgitate the garbage that I was taught in school. Now again, in school, if you're going to function, when I was a kid, they said they called it the 3 R's, just jokingly, reading, writing, and arithmetic. But again, those things are key, and a lot of folks in a certain generation, like, those are the basic things. History is subject to opinion. So fortunately, there are some books out there that have an alternative to what the system's history, in other words, the system's history books. But they don't tell you everything, as you may well know. Excuse me. Sorry. So again, but did we start with the hashtag?
It says, just in the eyes of the system, everyone is collateral damage, but it just goes into words. It's not a description. You want the words?
Okay, so these.
Yes.
Well, okay, let's go with the
It
words.
just says unimportant, irrelevant, non-essential, disposable, replaceable, expendable, dispensable,
Okay.
inessential, unessential, meaningless. Those sorts of words.
Yeah, okay. So literally, basically what I just said in words. I think the later hashtags got a little bit more involved in more detail with my meanings. But if anyone wants me to go any further with this, or you have some specific question around that, feel free to ask. If not, we'll just move to the next one. Okay.
Alright, so want me to read the list to you?
Let's see. Read the list real quick. First couple ones, I think, from the list.
Sure. So the first system gets the mind to destroy itself by getting it to believe in the ideas that will kill it.
Okay, I think we can go with that one. I think that what I just said, I said I can relate that to what I just talked about. That the system doesn't really give a hoot about anyone, and those who are supposedly in the hierarchy, they definitely live by different laws and different rules than the majority does in this world. So things that they will do that I would say that are done that will convince people that doing certain things are it's really cool or really good or so on and so forth. Eating certain foods, really it's really cool, and these burgers and things like that on commercials, and and they're pandering to children and people who are just not really that concerned about their health. So hamburgers, for instance, again through the last, I'd say, 30 years, which is one of the cool things about being mature. If you pay attention, you can just follow the pattern of how things go here, and that none of it has anything to do with the welfare of people on the planet. It has has, I would say density uses the lure of money as a way to just get people to do all kinds of things that will harm themselves and harm others. So I guess I think which is Super Size Me, that movie.
Oh, the movie?
Yeah, with McDonald's and Super Size Me. We talked about something like McDonald's back like in the 80s. Individuals started to actually do research about how healthy or literally how unhealthy McDonald's hamburgers were, and some of the other things that they do with the fries and so on and so forth. But the commercials are allowed to tell you that it's good for you and so on and so forth, when in reality it's really, really bad stuff. And I can say that for a fact because when I was in art college years ago, which was in the mid '70s, I tried to survive on McDonald's for a week, and by the end of that week, I felt bad and I looked like death warmed over, dark circles around my eyes and whatever, and and I'm eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner at McDonald's. Fortunately, at the time, my metabolism was really, really high, so I didn't get fat, but I really didn't look well and I didn't feel good either. So some years later, that it came out that I guess there were more people who were concerned about it because they were cheap. It was cheap food, and the worst stuff for you tends to be the cheapest sometimes. So some, but also it goes another way too, that there are those who figure the more money they spend, the healthier. These are some other cultures who have very healthy natural foods that they would eat for their culture, but then they would introduce Cheetos and Doritos into the mix, which cost more than the food that they had been eating before, which they were perfectly fine eating what they have been traditionally eating for ages. But they started buying these things because they figured, oh, it's more expensive. It means it must be better for you. And in some of these island cultures, the kids' hair would show signs of malnutrition, where the kids' hair from black would turn orange. And when they checked it out, they said, "Oh, these kids are suffering from malnutrition. What are you eating?" And you find that their parents were very ignorant. They just felt, well, if it costs more, it must be better. So they're feeding their kids this stuff and literally killing their kids. So
the other things that this post is referring to has to do with concepts that people embrace that are projected, on media, different kinds of topics from religion, competition, fear, romance, comparison, power, possessive, envy, jealousy, self-importance, selfishness, ego, arrogance, denial, obsession, denigration, delusions, and entitlement.
okay, yeah, well, all of those are definitely included. But again, I would say with the having to do with, again, things that are not healthy for you. I would say just certain rhetoric from the system, from density, so to speak, because the system is controlled by what I talk about. We've been talking about for quite some time now. The density that's on the other side that literally feed off of the essence of those in this hologram. So that bump just threw me off for a second.
And then when you talk about romance, we always talk about people setting themselves up for failure.
Okay.
In terms of like stressing themselves. People kill themselves over this idea of a fantasy woman or a fantasy man that they think they're going to hook up with. And then they spend all this time and there's even movies like about where they talk to these people online and then they just pop up at their house. I'm like, yeah, that's a great plan.
Yeah, and then they make it into a romantic comedy or something like that. Yeah, there are a lot of rules that are set up that really go against even the programming of the human avatar, so human nature. One of the things is just, an over-sexed, or very high sex drive that hits, as any of us who've gone through puberty, especially males, understand, how that feels to all of a sudden have this just on your mind every few minutes or whatever, once you reach puberty. And to the point where, in a lot of cases, it overrides the actual mental faculties of, young men, and, or even young women at times as well, where, as Ms. A was talking about, where they will get seeking the one or the twin flame or the soulmate and so on and so forth, to the point a lot of times where they get themselves into very dangerous situations. And I remember when I was a kid also, there were a lot of stories about someone coming in, and finding his wife or a girlfriend with some other guy, and then somebody would inevitably get killed, or the person would kill the two individuals and then kill himself and so on like that. These are things that are just like setups, I would say, by density, just to get that essence. So, when someone kills them, kills themselves or kills someone else, there's this whole family thing, that goes on with, having a sibling get murdered makes you feel a certain way, because they're family, and not to say that a person shouldn't feel anything for someone that they grew up with. I mean, I have feelings for those that I grew up with, and when certain few of them transitioned out, I was in a much better place as far as like philosophically how I looked at things, to realize that those particular individuals, they were tired of being here, therefore they wanted out. You know. But again, romance is can be very, very dangerous. Concept of romance. It can cause just individuals who may be getting along together have someone coming in because they have a very self-centered idea of what they want, and to the point of this insanity that this person that they want, who isn't interested in them, just doesn't know what's good for them. He doesn't understand that I'm a better, woman for him than, or better person for him than, than the person that he's dealing with. And it can be individuals who are in celebrity who have all these folks with this damage focusing on them, and men and women thinking that, yeah, that person, that's the person for me, and I'm going to get together with that person. Stories of individuals being stalked, who are in celebrities being stalked by strangers. And again, in a world where it seems like it's designed to drive everyone crazy, it's not a surprise that you find people who are so far out there that they would have this sense that they're entitled to possess another person. So these types of things definitely can lead to some really, really horrific things. And I don't know, as far as certain age groups, I've been around long enough to read a number of stories that way, where it's individuals who, a lot of times it's women who are being stalked, who are in celebrities being stalked, or who are in the show business are being stalked, and the guy will kill them if he couldn't have them, no one else could. This world does this to people. It fosters an insanity amongst the masses. So,
Saying too, Chief, that a lot of people with these romantic ideas, they'll go out and find maybe any woman or any guy, and then they begin to project their idea of how they want them to be. Oh, you're going to be like this. You're going to fit this role. You're going to do like this. You're going to behave like this. You're going to dress like this, and just totally try to control them. And then they're like, oh, it's so romantic. No, you're just being an asshole.
well, yeah, well, I mean, I ran into that in the last 4 years, off and on, where individuals will come in and, it'll clearly, even the sign that we had when, the place we were, where I had people coming into my studio, had neo shaman. but they will come in and say, you know, I have a friend who's a shaman too. I said, I'm not a shaman. I'm a shaman. Or they would just assume, they would just start to try to tell me all the new age shaman speak that they know, because, you know, that's the role that they saw me in. They couldn't see, all they can see was some concept that that the system gave them of what a shaman is, or some movies that they watched of what a shaman is, and so on and so forth. And they would come in with these expectations as to what they thought I was supposed to be. And inevitably, we'd have to have words at a certain point, so that I can actually really literally break through whatever that block that they had in their mind, because there were those who were insistent on wanting me to fit a certain, I would say, a certain bill, so to speak.
I remember you said that you wrote a letter to your ex-wife saying, you want to break up. And then your ex-wife was like, that's not you. You're like, this is my damn handwriting. You wrote it yourself. But she had this preconceived idea.
Yeah, well, it's like a lot of times, also, as Ms. A was bringing up, well, she or individuals will have this certain, relationship going on, and one person's not really happy in it. And that was the case and subject Ms. A was brought up. I was not happy with, after being with this person for a certain number of years. I was not happy with it, and it wasn't that I wanted this person to make me happy. That's selfish in itself. So it wasn't like I want her to make me happy. I wanted her to have respect and consideration for who I am and my space and my time and so on and so forth. But her thing was, like a lot of people's thing is that, it's like they just feel like they caught this person. And now they spend a lot of time trying to keep these individuals in prison, and that's what I felt. And so I just said, well, let's just express ourselves and what we feel is going on in this relationship. And she wrote her thing, and I wrote mine, and hers was just very much her own, personal view of things that had nothing to do with me. It's like some fantasy that she had in her mind about what the relationship was, even though I had expressed, dissatisfaction in that situation due to selfishness and inconsideration. So I read hers, and it's like, gosh, I don't know what relationship she's in, who she's involved with, because sure, the hell isn't me. She reads mine, which is just very to the point. I'm unhappy with this. These are some of the key things that are really bothersome for me. And as I say, because I told Ms. A the story, she said, this isn't you. And this was before, sorry, I have to clear my throat so much today. That, this was before you did a lot of printouts on computers. This was before personal computers really became really a big thing. And my handwriting, I handed to the person, and because of their own delusions, they refused. No, this isn't real. This isn't real. This isn't you. This is, what do you do with that?
And you were saying, Chief, also, just as a segue into other things,
Thank you.
Competition is another deadly idea that kills your mind. So, for example, you were saying that this ex-wife was jealous of your success, jealous of your talent in music, jealous of all these things, even jealous of her own kids and their talents.
Yeah.
Sabotage.
Well, there are a lot of people who get into, and they want it to stay static, which means that they don't want the other person to actually expand or grow beyond that relationship, which ends up having to do with fear, insecurity, and then again, selfishness. So when I got married, I was driving pretty much a beater of a Volkswagen Bug. A tree had fallen on the damn thing or whatever, and the bruises and so on. But I was saving my money, for bigger things and so on. And so and also this is before my business really took off. I was still working on it at that time. That's why it took off, because I was working on it. And I had plans. I didn't take whatever little money I had and then just try to look like something I wasn't. Try to look like someone, driving expensive cars and so on and so forth, just to impress a person. When I lived in Los Angeles, when I was in my 20s, there were guys who would spend, all this money on this particular sports car. I forget the model of it, but it was a nice looking sports car. And you find after a while, they even had this, club for these cars and so on and so forth, and they'd be very sharply dressed or whatever. And later, I would start to find that, excuse me, a number of these individuals were sleeping in their cars because they couldn't afford rent. So, me, more practical, I put, kept my money in the bank, build it up so that I could actually purchase, which I did end up purchasing my first piece of property, a co-op, which is, shares in a building, and your apartment is a share. So the bigger your apartment, the bigger share you have in the co-op, and so on. And so with that, I'm working to improve my situation. Things started to change. This person came in and she felt like, oh, this guy's easy. He doesn't have much, and so on. I can control this guy because he doesn't have much, And I withstood the ridicule of her friends and her family and so on and so forth. But it's like, okay, fine, whatever they think, about me. I just, please don't ask me to visit these people with you, which I still would at times. But in the end, I did what I had planned to do. I built up. Things got better because of me, primarily. And this individual, who I guess thought that she was better than me, realized that I was a more effective person and more efficient in my life than she was. And this happens in a lot of relationships. So a lot of times relationships tend to grow apart. It's just natural, because in order for everyone to grow like this, somebody's got to be shackled to someone. So you got this other person shackled to you, and they literally, try to prevent their growth just so that your insecurity can be satisfied. And that was the situation with this individual. Sometimes they do it in rhetoric, but again, I'm not an idiot. I can tell when someone's trying to play me or whatever. But I did believe in relationship at that time. I really did. And, in getting together, getting married at some point, and then, inevitably having kids, all of this stuff that the system tells you that you should do. Once I got into the reality of it, none of it was easy. None of it mimicked all the stories that they put out there that are basic lies. People get involved in these romantic novels and romance movies and so on and so forth, and really thinking that, then maybe they're hoping that that's real, but relationships end up crashing one after the next because they're basing relationship on a lie. So before a lot of this stuff was these movies and these certain types of romance novels had become really popular, there was more of a not very, in other words, realistic relationship was more realistic because there wasn't anything telling them that it was supposed to be this flowery thing. A lot of women in a lot of cultures just felt like, oh crap, depending on the culture, this is the prison I'm going to be living in for the rest of my days, basically making babies and, working hard and making babies, literally. Or the guy, if he was someone who was serious about relationships or his relationship and the concept of marriage and all that, he'd go out there, busting butt, day in, day out, because, I'm supposed to be the breadwinner, so I'm bringing home the bacon. And as we know, even with all of these stories that they feed you to try to, segue you into this insanity of marriage and childbearing and all that, some get in it and they just like, later for this, and they'll leave, guys will leave the family. A lot of times the women end up, holding the kids, but I've run into men whose wives have left, and he ends up, with the kids and, raising the kids by himself as well. So all that to say that, I think I mentioned it before, the sea of lies. It's like you live in the sea of lies. And, and you really can't take anything that you get from the system or society serious. Because there are people, again, they look at it and say, this stuff isn't working. Guys say, oh, this, one woman thing. Later, I'm gonna, I'm horny as hell. I'm gonna, be with as many women as I can be with. And being a man, I have definitely run into, guys like that. Now, as far as like, do I ridicule them for their, just being that way? No, I don't. Those are the rules. I think it's with religion and so on that have to do with, someone's book. Someone made a rule. One man, one woman, so on and so forth. Yeah, they go against it all the time. Mm-hmm. There's also cultures where, the woman can actually have more than one male in her life. And some of the stuff that I've read about this, just in this year, I read something having to do with the family. I think this might be Indonesia, right? The one where the brothers will wed one woman, and she'll be the wife of up to maybe 3 brothers.
If one of them dies, there's always someone to take care of her.
Yeah, because in that time, there will always be somebody who can actually, take care, in other words, take care of the family, go out and do the man things and so on and so forth while she's home doing the woman things, So, it's like who decides what is the standards for relationship? But I'm actually got so into it, I'm trying to remember exactly what the true logic was that I'm not.
Well, it's good. People don't get to hear these kinds of things on the regular. Think about how many times they hear the lie over when they hear the truth.
Yeah.
So the next things, other concepts that kill the mind are religion, like you were referencing. Who defines what, and who tells you, like the sea of lies. So the system is defining to you everything that you should think. Yeah,
well, in a lot of Western cultures, it's like whose religion dominates everything. So there are other folks coming with other religious views. If they don't have the numbers, then they're kind of subject to the religion of the masses. But even in the United States, that's kind of loose around the edges. There are the Mormons who, where a certain sects of Mormonism, they exercise polygamy, where they have, numerous wives and so on. But even back in history about who would control society, who was the chieftain of society, there were cultures where the women, were the chieftains or the heads of that particular community or that particular society. So again, a lot of stuff comes in with the West. It's very Christian heavy. It gets spread all over the place. And then these cultures who had one way of living starts to get, twisted into this, this very Western Christian way of doing things.
Yes, for example, Chief, in Thailand, they have, they're Buddhists, so there's like this thing called tambat, and you can make merit by doing positive things for others, like, helping, like when you fell off your motorbike, immediately there was someone who jumped off and was like trying to help you get your bike up and get you up. So he was considered thinking, I'm doing tambun, I will reap benefits, from my behavior. But in Christianity, it's not like that. You can be a mass murderer, but you pray to Jesus right before you die, and you can go to heaven. It's really fucked up.
Yeah. Which I've heard about this for years. Someone can do just all kind of horrific things, but on their deathbed, if they commit themselves to Christ,
sincerely,
supposed to sincerely. Of course, if you believe in heaven or hell, you're not not sure about it, I'm quite sure they can put on a pretty good act to make themselves seem sincere.
Like whenever your eyes are transforming, so sometimes at banks they'll be extra careful to show you your place to sit or this or that, because they're even doing Talmud at banks and other places like that. So it's all throughout the culture. And whenever I was in the States, I've seen them just be rude to people who there's a lot more aggression in Christian places that I noticed, and that aggression is based off the Bible. I even have a verse here. Every Joshua 1:3, every place wherein the soles of your feet shall tread shall be yours. So go into all these places and take over. Go into all the world and make disciples of all men. So fuck their religion, fuck their ideas, become a Christian. So how respectful and considerate is that, and how much does that destroy your mind?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Like that. So that's really where we're talking about even the earlier logic, that there's all this conflicting stuff going on. So what do you choose to follow? I choose to follow logic. That's why I put out these true logic, things that make true logical sense, not fake logic, because they're individuals. I said, do you understand logic? He said, yeah, numbers. And I never really thought, I said, well, numbers are numbers. That's how I grew up and learned. But I never thought that numbers was equated as just logic in itself. I thought logic was an expansive thing. And the elders that I grew up under, who are no longer around, they call it like mother wit. Do the logical thing. Do the thing that makes sense. Think about it for yourself, and not look at some rhetoric from some book, regardless as to whatever religion it is, that will tell you to do something that is really just doesn't seem to jive with you. And there is a lot of stuff in the Christian, in the Bible that is kind of confusing. Trying to read it. Yeah.
Like the Bible is a spell book, as we know, a giant spell book, and a lot of the things that they say, they contradict each other. So like the J-man is supposed to save your soul, but then God is a God of war. Like what the fuck? So,
yeah. Well, you went through a number of different names for the J-man, even the so-called the devil, which kind of the devil called with the light or something like that.
I have.
Something that you would consider to be positive, or a phrase that would seem to be positive, they're using for something that's supposed to be very evil.
Yes. So like they have things that I think they have like posters and things like that about the names of the J-man, and a lot of them are names that, like for example, the God is great and I'm shit thing. Humble yourself before the Lord and He will lift you up. But that's you can become stuck in that position with your face on the ground, and then you start thinking less of yourself, and it just eats away at you every day.
Well, those of you that Ms. A grew up in a Christian, might as well say a Christian cult, so to speak. So, I never challenge anything she says about this stuff. I have the peripheral experience with Christianity having to do with, family members, being, Christians and so on. So I can only speak from what I observed, about how they live their lives and so on. But Ms. A, she knows it a lot, more thoroughly than I do. And I know one of the ones you were talking about as far as like, God's great I am shit was something, some saying about you should be the paving stone for others.
Yes.
So it's like you should lay yourself down on the ground and let others walk over you to get to whatever their destination or their goal is, which is really contradictory of everything, really.
Yes, they have this verse that says the greatest of all is a servant of all. So imagine you're going into, a new job like that, and you'll just get taken advantage of. You'll just end up working tons of hours, and they're not going to pay you more because you're the servant. They teach you to not respect yourself, But most of the people who are in churches, a lot of them are very predatory. So they don't even give a shit about the verse, greatest of all, servant of all. We had a pastor freaking stand up on the stage and say, oh, you know what would be great? Excuse me, certain genetics would do better. Should I go with that?
Well, you can go with what the guy said.
I'll just say what he said.
There's been some wild things said.
He said white people should be the pastors, black people should sing, and Asians should serve. I was like, oh shit, he just said that, and it's just so they're so blinded by their own ideas. And what is this? The greatest of all is the servant of all. He was very disrespectful. So they never follow what they say they follow. Christianity is super hypocritical, and it is acidic to the mind. Definitely destructive.
Okay. So anyway, we'll move out of the religion, but it is part of a major issue, on the planet. And there are definitely other very, very, I should say, repressive religions, besides Christianity. But apparently, when we were doing the research some time ago, Christianity seemed to have proliferated more than all the other religions. So that's why this is, when we talk about religion, a lot of times this is what we know because you grew up in the West. That was the acclamation. That was my acclamation. I had to, as an adult, start to research what other cultures believe, what actual African cultures believe, what other Asian cultures believe, what, as far as like First Nations people believed, and so on and so forth, to get a rounder concept of spiritual ideas, spiritual beliefs. So again, that's one of the things that I always promote is reading about other cultures and getting into, even if you don't quite understand it, but open your mind enough to not really immediately knee-jerk denigrate it. So my first time, and I really, one of the things I really do like about Thailand, even though it's Tambab, if you don't, if you do, bad things, at least there's something that's keeping people in line. So, for me, it works fine. I have a vision impairment that's happened over the last couple of years, and we go places and people they try to accommodate anyone that seems to be have an impairment, which is a new experience for me because I'm just used to being do whatever so on and so forth. But I'm a very considerate individual. If I see someone impaired, I try to, if there's some way where they're struggling with something, I'll jump in there and try to help them along. A lot of times they're used to doing whatever they're doing, so I stay out of their way. Some folks come in, like in the West, it was, they may disrespect you, but then some will just bogart their help, grab the person's arm and the person, hey. So again,
we only have 6 minutes.
okay, we can just stay on this subject.
Envy and jealousy is another topic that is an idea that kills the mind. Do you have?
That's it, envy and jealousy. Well, again, emotions. When we talk about in the shamanic understanding, that emotions are something that is something primarily of a dense realm. Because a lot of the emotions that we're talking about having to do with anger, and as they say, jealousy, fear, hate, all of these things. Now they say, well, isn't being happy, an emotion? And say, yeah, well, you can definitely put that in that category. But the number of moments that you consider to be happy moments are overshadowed by all the others, and one that overshadows all of everything is stress. So being stressed, feeling stressful is, I guess you consider it an emotion, or it's a byproduct of fear. And I said with fear and darn it, I forgot what the other one was that I had added to that. But anyway, fear is a basis for a lot of negative emotions, and fear goes throughout everything. So there's a lot of things that you will do. Sometimes people work really, really hard out of fear of being homeless, or the fear of being looked down upon because you have less. So there are those who, who will, just push and push and push and push for money because they don't want it to be looked at a certain way. A lot of times it can be some very negative reasons for it because they want to lord over others. Being large and in charge. Majority of the planet is acclimated to money when that definitely wasn't how things started here, because they had other ways of bartering and so on and so forth, but they boiled it down to paper money that really doesn't have any value. The only reason it has value is because people believe it does. And when people stop believing, I would say when, because I doubt very much if folks will want to all of a sudden decide that money doesn't mean anything when the system controls everybody through it, and they control, how the word gets out, or if somebody's really pushing hard to shape the foundation of the system. A lot of times they get targeted, they get bumped off, they get villainized, and so on and so forth, that they can find some weakness that person has. One of the things also in this realm, weakness is literally figured into your genetics, everybody's genetics. They got to have, an Achilles heel, just in case this consciousness decides to get a little out of hand, literally trying to do something that is balanced. So you can kind of get away with trying to do things balanced for yourself, but with being bombarded by those who are what I call box heads, which means that they think inside of the box of the system. So those who are afraid to think outside of the system, I call them box heads. So if you're doing what you're doing now with these sessions and so on, and listening to what I'm talking about, and you try to express it, guess what? There's always going to be somebody who's going to try to criticize you. The funny thing about what I do, those who are my students and clients, they will get leaned on at times, or maybe a lot of times, if they start to expound what they're learning from, because it threatens, it's like, the woman in red piece in the Matrix, where he just tells you that anybody can be a Smith. So when you start to think a certain way, you start to talk a certain way, all of a sudden, if you want to look at it, just very much like in the Matrix, the person you're talking to, they start to, next thing you know, there's a guy with sunglasses, telling you that you shouldn't be thinking that way because you know what's good for you. So I don't know if you're, okay, so we got 2 minutes. So, an hour goes by really fast, but I have to admit, I'm not going to change it because the amount of energy that we put into researching and everything, we don't really have, much time for us to even get our own head together because we're so into the movement, which I would do this, I wouldn't trade it for anything, but there was something else.
There's other topics like ego and arrogance are ideas that kill the mind, and people sometimes their ego or arrogance is so intense that they don't even realize they have it, and they accuse everyone else of having it instead.
Yeah, because you can get programmed into a certain way of thinking just by where you grow up, who you grow up with, or what society you're growing up in. So then a lot of it's locking individuals into a mindset saying the way we think is the way to think, the way they think is wrong. So if you enter the world with that attitude, you're going to have a hard time really in the end. Or some will go to places where they look down on individuals and just assume that these individuals really like them. Money again. A lot of times, someone's going to kiss up to you because they think you got money, which means we got money that improves their lives or whatever. If they're you got money, just buy me useless stuff, but they think that these guys have money, so they're like, oh, you're so handsome. But back home, he definitely is considered a low caste, unattractive individual. But because he's been brainwashed into thinking, oh, these particular people over here, they will like us from this country, and and almost as though they sincerely like this person. But there's been a number of scams here in Thailand where women would just literally, because there's a disparity here as far as with money and those who have and those who don't. So those who don't will tend to be quite tricky at times. Not all of them, but a large number will be tricky at times to try to get resources from these individuals who are coming actually to get something from them as well, but coming to get something and not pay for it, or just figure they just throw a few coins and that's good, and get really irritated if these individuals literally want what they have, what they want also. So I don't know if that's clear or not, but anyway. Yeah, I feel like kind of rushed because I think I went over the 2-minute mark, but
well, I don't know. Can I also this thought just keeps coming up over and over, so I'll just check.
Okay, we can do yes.
Okay, well, just to kind of like wrap it up, since a lot of this topic was first started with the idea of romance being an idea that kills your mind. You said that actually it's better to think of a relationship as a business. So whoever is most qualified should be the leader of that relationship. For example, Chief, he's the most qualified. He is the wisest. He's the smartest. He's the oldest. So therefore, he's like a manager to me, a boss to me, and I learn from him. Just like if you're a worker, you look up to the manager to give you the instructions you need so the business can move forward. And we both have a similar goal. And if you are a good worker, you support your manager. You support him in whatever way you can, because if you make your boss look good, they make you look good.
Well, I kind of have to cringe when you keep saying boss, but anyway.
I know, but it's true though.
But well, again, it's like in communities where that are more balanced than not, that are not part of it's an extreme part of the system before the system really entrenched itself everywhere. They would actually literally go for those who were the wisest, whether that person be female or male, to literally, since they run things, but actually they would come for the wisdom of that individual for whatever's going on in their everyday life. If there's an issue, they go for the one who's very good at figuring out problems. So that can be very, in other words, across, gender lines and so on and so forth. The boss thing, it kind of reminds me of religion more so than what I just said, But, again, Ms. A is definitely not wrong in what she's saying. But for some reason, maybe it's some MC that I have that cringes about the whole concept of bosses because I never liked bosses when I was,
Well, there's I've actually had some managers that were not that bad, and there were some that were real assholes. So if Chief is very respectful of me and he's very considerate of me, so it's like I'm happy to follow you. But I know I was just saying that I noticed that if you have a slightly more business idea of it, it's way better than a romantic idea of a relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's like, well, I didn't have that many that are considered to be nice employers that they want to call boss. Even when I had, others were calling a person a boss, I would say my employer, because whatever the stigma was behind that. The first boss I had was my father unit. He was really a monster to work under. But anyway, I know that we've gone over the time, and we will continue this on the next forum. And if anyone has even, you come up with some of the and more true logics, and we just got through 2, so we're not going to try to just slide by doing true logics because I wrote them or whatever. We may end up putting in some other subject matter with the future forums, and some of them that we've talked about today, having to do with rather than get into that, I think when the time comes, we'll just give everyone a heads up. But thanks everyone for being part of the forum and submitting your true logics. I never really know where this is going to go until I start. So that's why, we end up getting through two. But all the other ones do deserve attention, and I will give them that attention. Okay? So thank you again, and we will be talking to you. Okay.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you, Mrs. A.
Bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome.
ค่ะ
Bye-bye.
ขอบคุณค่ะ
ยินดีครับ